And what if an ordinary day turned into the day when your whole life was turned upside down? That's exactly what happened to Ethan Morales. He believed he was in control, with a packed schedule, million-dollar deals, and grand plans for the future. But it only took one instant, one line, and 4 pairs of eyes to unravel it all. It isn't every day that you come face to face with the past, and with it, what might have been your greatest forgotten responsibility. Have you ever wondered what you would do if you discovered you had children and never knew of their existence? And even more, how would you react if you realized that while you were building your empire, someone was struggling alone to raise those children? The truth is, no one is prepared for that. Ethan wasn't either. But that day, he learned that certain truths cannot be avoided, and that some choices come with a price that no amount of money can pay. It was a stifling afternoon in Los Angeles. Ethan was returning from a meeting and decided to personally check out a community center where a social project with investment potential was underway. He arrived on time, as always. Impeccable suit, perfectly polished shoes, the confidence of someone used to being greeted with a red carpet. But in that simple, crowded building, no one knew who he was. "End of the line," said the attendant, without even looking up. That wounded his ego a bit, but he complied. And it was there, standing among strangers, that everything began. The line moved slowly, and Ethan took the opportunity to answer some emails on his cell phone. Until something, or rather someone, captured his attention. 2 children playing rock, paper, scissors. A boy with a worn-out book. And a girl, about 5 years old, holding tightly to a woman's hand. The woman had her hair tied up haphazardly and deep dark circles under her eyes, but Ethan recognized her even before she fully turned her face. It was Sophia, his former love. The woman he had left behind 5 years earlier when he set off for Asia to expand his business. And those 4 little ones, with the same brown eyes and determined expressions, made his world stop. He couldn't stop staring. The features were too striking to be a coincidence. The eyes, the nose, even the serious way the boy clutched his book, it was like looking at a miniature version of himself. Ethan's mind spun. All those years, he had thought the past was well settled, that every choice he had made was necessary. But now, standing there in the middle of a line, surrounded by people he didn't even know, all he could think was, how did I not know? Why didn't anyone tell me? Sophia still hadn't seen him. She was bent over, trying to calm the youngest, who was starting to get impatient with the wait. The way she spoke to him, the affection in her gestures, the care. It moved Ethan in a way he hadn't expected. For a moment he forgot everything. The meeting, the business, the expensive suit that was already clinging to him because of the heat. Everything that mattered at that moment was right there, just a few meters away, and he didn't even know the children's names. He didn't know if they knew anything about him. The line advanced. Ethan, half in a trance, took 2 steps forward. That's when fate decided to add its theatrical touch to the story. One of the twins tripped, bumping into Sophia and sending the papers she was holding flying on the ground. One of the forms ended up right at Ethan's feet. He instinctively bent down, picked up the paper, and when he stood back up, her eyes met his. For a second, the world seemed to stop. There was no more noise, no line, no community center. Only Sophia's astonished gaze and the weight of 5 years of silence between them. "Ethan," she murmured, as if the word itself hurt to speak. He tried to smile, but couldn't. He extended the paper with his trembling hand, trying to find something to say, anything at all. But she was the one to break the silence with an unexpected coolness. "You didn't expect to see me here, did you?" Ethan didn't know what to reply. He wanted to say no, that he had no idea about any of this, that he was in shock. But nothing came out, And before he could explain himself, she added, "Of course not. You never expected anything from me after you left." Her words hit Ethan like a punch in the chest. There were no shouts or dramatics, just a contained pain, chewed over by years of silence and loneliness. The line kept moving, but at that moment, everything around him seemed to slow down. Sophia gathered the papers from the floor with one hand, while with the other she firmly held the hand of her older daughter, who now looked at Ethan with curiosity, as if she somehow knew, without fully understanding, that that man was more than a stranger. "They are," Ethan began, unsure if he could or should finish the question. Sophia took a deep breath. "They're your children, Sophia, Ben, Matteo, and Luna." She stated the names firmly, as if declaring a truth that could no longer be hidden. Ethan felt the ground give way beneath his feet. The names echoed in his head, as if someone had shouted them inside him. Each name carried not just a sound, but a weight, a piece of the life he had lost. Or worse, a life he never even knew existed. The boy with the book, Ben, raised his eyes just for a second before returning to his world between the pages. The twins, Matteo and Luna, played with their hands, distracted, and the eldest, Sophia, kept her gaze fixed on him, saying nothing, but her eyes were asking questions. And that was the part that hurt the most, because even without a word, Ethan knew what she wanted to know. Why weren't you there? Why did you leave us? Only he didn't have an answer ready, and for the first time in his life, not even the best corporate speech could save the situation. "I tried to find you," Sophia said, lowering her voice. "Emails, calls, I even went to your old company, but your assistant always said you were traveling, that you couldn't be disturbed, that you weren't available." Each sentence hit like a new blow. Ethan thought of all the times he had avoided getting involved with the past, of how many messages he had ignored, not even knowing what they were trying to say. "I never knew. I swear I never knew," he murmured. Sophia simply shook her head, as if she had heard that excuse before. The atmosphere between them grew heavy, tense. People in line began to notice the discomfort. A few curious glances turned their way, but Ethan didn't even notice. All he saw was Sophia trying to maintain her composure while her children edged closer to her, as if sensing that something was not right. Little Luna clutched the strap of her mother's blouse and asked softly, "Mommy, is that man mad?" Sophia smiled at her daughter, but her eyes were teary. "No, my love. He's just surprised." Then Ethan took a small wallet from his pocket and pulled out a business card. It was his personal number, a number used only by those very close to him. He extended it to Sophia with his slightly trembling hand. "Please, when you're ready, when you feel prepared, call me. I just want to understand everything." She looked at the card for a second and then put it away without saying a word. She promised nothing, didn't confirm if she would call. She simply turned to the front of the line as if the conversation were over there, and maybe, for now, it was. Her children said nothing, but they were listening. Sophia seemed ready for any question, yet none were asked. The line moved on. She handed the papers at the counter, and the clerk began the registration process. Ethan remained there, standing still, unsure whether to leave or wait for some more sign. Little Sophia, the daughter, not the mother, was the last to look at him before her family moved on. And in that look, there was more than just curiosity. There was judgment, there was pain, and there was the question Ethan knew he would have to answer sooner or later. Will you disappear again? As he returned to his car, Ethan felt a kind of emptiness he had never experienced before. He had lost important contracts, made bad decisions, seen millions slip through his fingers, but nothing compared to the feeling of having let an entire family pass him by unnoticed. When his reflection appeared in the car window, he barely recognized himself. For the first time, that successful man seemed small. And maybe he was, because now he knew that he had left behind what truly mattered. Ethan's driver asked if he still wanted to go to the meeting with the local startup. He didn't even answer. He simply got in the car and requested to be taken back to the hotel. The meeting no longer made sense. In fact, the entire expansion plan he had devised seemed purposeless at that moment. As the car pulled away from the community center, he looked out the window, but he didn't see the city. He saw the eyes of the older daughter, the silence of the boy with the book, the twins playing on the floor, and Sophia with that silent strength that unsettled him more than any difficult investor. Back in his luxury suite with a panoramic view of Los Angeles, Ethan sat on the sofa, unable to move. The phone rang relentlessly. Investors, partners, the communications team. He ignored them all. For the first time in years, he wasn't in a hurry, and he didn't even know what to do. He stared at his cell phone screen, where his assistant's name kept flashing. All that came to mind was one question. How many messages had she filtered over all those years? How many times had someone tried to talk to him about something that truly mattered? The next morning, even before having breakfast, he called Ricardo, his trusted private investigator. The voice on the other end was sleepy but attentive. "I want you to investigate everything related to Sophia. Calls, emails, any attempt to contact me in the last 5 years. I need to know if she really tried to find me." Ricardo hesitated for a second before replying, "It's going to take time, but I can do it." Ethan simply said, "It doesn't matter how long it takes, nor the cost. I need the truth." He hung up and stared into nothingness, trying to understand how his life had been turned upside down in one day. Hours later, he called Maria, the housekeeper who had worked with the family since before he left for Asia. When she entered the apartment, she sensed the different atmosphere. Ethan looked exhausted, dejected, as if he had aged overnight. "Maria, I have children," he said, as if he still couldn't believe it. She was silent for a few seconds, then let out a long sigh. "I always suspected that one day this would come to light." Then silently, she went over to the closet, retrieved an old shoebox, and placed it on the table. When Ethan opened it and saw the letters, he felt the ground open up beneath him once more. Inside the box were 5 letters, some still sealed, others yellowed with time, all handwritten. Maria sat in front of Ethan, looking at him with a mix of affection and guilt. "They started coming in right after you left for Asia. They were always from the same woman. At first, they arrived once a week, then they stopped. Your father, well, he gave clear orders. No correspondence from that woman. He said you needed to focus on the future." Ethan fell silent, his eyes fixed on Sophia's handwriting on the envelope. "Did you know?" he asked, not accusing, just wanting to understand. Maria lowered her eyes, visibly upset. "Yes, I knew, and I regret it every day. But your father was firm, and I only wanted to protect you. I swore I thought she would move on, that it was for the best." Ethan took a deep breath, trying to process it all. He opened the first letter. Inside was an ultrasound image. 2 tiny dark spots, almost imperceptible, but that already contained everything he needed to know. It was proof that she had tried, that she had never wanted to hide them. The guilt he felt transformed into a physical weight, crushing his chest. "He knew from the very beginning," Ethan murmured. "My father knew," Maria nodded sadly. "But he only found out about the twins. The other letters never made it here. After that, she must have tried in other ways." Ethan took the ultrasound, holding it as if it were glass. He thought of the names she had mentioned: Sophia, Ben, Matteo, Luna. 4 entire lives, unfolding without him. 4 children growing up without knowing who their father was, and he, thinking he was succeeding in life, had no idea that his greatest failure was precisely what he ignored, being a father. Suddenly, he stood up. He went to the window, opened the curtains, and looked out at the city. Los Angeles stretched out before him, busy, bright, but he was thinking of only one thing. Where were his children now? What were they doing? Do they like pizza, soccer? Do they go to public, school? Are they afraid of the dark? With the ultrasound still in his hands, he returned to the table and said firmly, "Maria, I need to change everything, right now." And in that moment, without a structured plan, without a timeline, without an Excel spreadsheet, Ethan took the first step to rebuild a part of the life he didn't even know he had lost. The next day, Ethan cancelled all his meetings for the week. For the first time in years, he gave up contracts, trips, and presentations to take care of something that couldn't be delegated: his conscience. He called Ricardo and asked him to intensify the investigation. He wanted to know everything: where they lived, what school they attended, what kind of life they led. But without invading their privacy, he emphasized. "I don't want to scare anyone. I just need to understand what I lost." Ricardo was silent for a moment before replying, "I'll handle it personally." Ethan hung up and, on impulse, began writing a list by hand. He had never been one to write on paper, but at that moment he needed to feel every word, every commitment. He jotted down: learn each one's likes, help with homework, be present, don't run away. As he wrote, he felt a strange mix of anxiety, guilt, and hope. He wondered what the first real reunion would be like. Not that shock at the community center, but a genuine moment, a safe space, an invitation to get closer, even if slowly. Maria came in with a tray of coffee, noticed the papers, and smiled knowingly. "Today you seem more human, Ethan." He returned the smile, a bit embarrassed. "Maybe it's the first time I've tried to be." That same afternoon, Ricardo came back with some information. They live in a modest neighborhood in East LA. Sophia works 2 shifts at a hospital cafe. All 4 attend public schools. No record of problems, no scandals, nothing. Just a mother fighting to raise 4 children on her own. Ethan swallowed hard. His chest tightened with each detail he heard. He thought about how much he spent on luxuries, how full his schedule was of things that seemed urgent, but really weren't. The next day, he went to the front of the school where the 2 older ones studied. He didn't get out of his car. He just observed. He saw his daughter running out and leaping into her mother's arms. He saw the boy with the book walking silently, close to them. He noticed the smiles, the way she adjusted the backpacks, the affection with which she listened to every word. And there, parked on the other side of the street, Ethan was sure of one thing. He wasn't ready, but he had to try. He couldn't ignore what was now impossible to forget. That night, Ethan stayed awake. The image of the children walking on the sidewalk alongside Sophia wouldn't leave his mind. No matter how exhausted he was, sleep simply wouldn't come. He got up several times, walked around the apartment, looked at the toys he had bought hours earlier that were still in their bag: a soccer ball, a set of colored pencils, a storybook. He thought about how he could make the first contact without frightening the children, without intruding on the space Sophia had built with so much effort. It was like trying to enter a house where he was supposed to live, but that had remained locked for far too long. The next morning, he made a decision. He called a contact at the hospital where Sophia worked and asked them to discreetly look into how to improve the cafe's facilities. He said it was an anonymous donation. Then he contacted a trusted lawyer and requested the creation of a fund to cover all the children's medical expenses, both current and future. Not in his name. He wanted to do it without being noticed. He wanted to ease her burden without turning her into a media or speculation target. It wasn't about proving anything. It was about starting to make things right. He also realized that he needed to be present, and not only through distant actions. He called Anna, Sophia's sister with whom he had little contact in the past, and asked for a conversation. He was direct. "I want to see the children. I want to get to know them, but only if Sophia allows it, only if they're ready." Anna, cautious, said she'd understand the situation better and would get back to him. "Just one thing, Ethan. This family has learned to live without you. They don't need promises. They need consistency. If you're going to disappear again, it'd be better not to start at all." He swallowed hard. It hurt, but it was fair. 2 days later, he received a message from Anna. "Saturday, there's a book fair at the cultural center. Sophia will take the 2 older ones. I'll be there with them. If you want to show up, it's your decision." Ethan's heart raced. It was the opportunity he had been waiting for. He spent the rest of the week studying everything about the children's interests, books, characters, authors. He watched videos about fatherhood, read articles, even asked Maria for tips on what to say in a conversation with intelligent and sensitive children. He didn't want to seem like a rich stranger. He wanted, for the first time, simply to be a father. On Saturday, Ethan arrived early at the cultural center. He was nervous in a way that even meetings with billionaire investors never made him feel. He wore dark jeans, a casual shirt, and simple sneakers. He wanted to seem approachable, like an ordinary person. He walked among the bookstalls trying to keep calm until he saw Inna approaching with the 2 older children by her side. Sophia was leading, confident and observant, while Ben walked a little behind, with a book already under his arm. When the little girl's eyes met his, she didn't smile, but she didn't look away either. She simply observed, seriously, as if she were analyzing who he really was. Anna was the one who made the introductions. "Sophia, Ben, this is Ethan." For a second, no one said anything. Then the girl extended her hand, formally, as if in a meeting. "Hi, Mom said that you are our dad." Ethan smiled, not quite knowing how to react. It's true, and I'm very happy to see you." Ben looked up, still silent. He clutched the book tightly, as if it were a shield. Anna intervened gently. "Shall we take a walk? There's a reading session right outside." And as if something unlocked at that moment, they began walking together. During the walk, Ethan was tested at every minute. Sophia asked direct, intelligent, and sometimes disconcerting questions. "Did you read books when you were little, or did you only think about money?" He laughed a bit sheepishly. "I read a lot. Mostly adventure stories. And yes, I did think about money too, I confess." She only nodded. Ben, on the other hand, remained silent until, upon seeing a stall with history books, he pointed to a specific volume and said, "This is the one I wanted." Ethan took the book and handed it to him. "Take it." Ben took it without a word, but this time he didn't move away. As much. They spent over an hour together talking about books, characters, and topics that interested the children. Ethan discovered that Sophia loved astronomy and that Ben had a fascination with historical revolutions. He felt that he was getting to know his children through the subjects that made their eyes light up. Every word spoken, every question answered was another step on that bridge he was trying to build. And at the end of the walk, as they said goodbye, Anna remarked in a way that warmed Ethan's heart, "You passed the first test, but many more are ahead." That night Ethan arrived home exhausted, but in a way unlike any tiredness he had ever felt. It was a good kind of tired from having experienced something real, something important. He spent hours replaying every gesture, every response from the children, every time Sophia looked at him with that mix of distrust and curiosity. He sat on the sofa, opened the notebook where he had been writing everything about the children, and made new notes. Sophia is quick, direct, and doesn't tolerate nonsense. Ben is quiet, but observant. He notices everything. When he speaks, it's because he trusts. At the end of the page, he wrote a sentence. I'm beginning to understand who they are. In the following days, messages from Anna became frequent. Short updates, always brief, but full of meaning. Sophia asked which telescope you used in China. Ben read about the Great Wall and mentioned he wanted to see pictures. And then came the invitation he hadn't expected so soon. Lucia and Matteo, the twins, have sports practice on Saturday in the neighborhood park. If you want to come, take it slow. They are more sensitive, and they need time. Ethan felt a chill in his stomach. If it had been difficult with the older ones, with the little ones, it would be an even greater challenge. On Saturday, he arrived at the park 20 minutes early. He carried a small water bottle and wore light clothes, as Anna had recommended. From afar, he saw the twins, Lucia sitting in the shade, drawing in a notebook, Matteo running back and forth, as if he had springs in his feet. When he got closer, Anna approached him. Today, just observe. If they want to talk, they'll talk. If not, that's fine too. Ethan nodded, nervous. He knew he couldn't force anything. He needed to earn every inch of space in the lives of those two little ones who had never heard his voice. Matteo was the first to notice. He stopped running, looked from a distance and shouted, "Is that him?" Anna responded with a nod. Matteo ran toward them, suddenly stopped and, breathing heavily, asked, "Are you really my dad? Or are you just pretending to give gifts later?" Ethan smiled, bent down to meet him at his height and said, "I'm your dad, and I didn't come here to give gifts. I just came to watch you run." Matteo was silent for 2 seconds and then said, "Then watch me. I run fast like a rocket." And before Ethan could reply, he was already sprinting down the sandy track again, while Matteo ran, laughing loudly and shouting things only he seemed to understand. Ethan turned his gaze to Lucia. Seated on a small wall, she was absorbed in her drawing. Her face was serious, but not sad. It was as if she were in another world. He approached slowly, respecting her space. "What are you drawing?" he asked in a calm voice. Lucia looked up, sized him up from head to toe, and then showed him her notebook. It was a drawing of the park, with its paths, and a figure in a dark blue t-shirt watching from afar. "Is that me?" Ethan asked, smiling sincerely. Lucia nodded, saying nothing. "You draw very well," he continued. "Do you prefer drawing what you see, or what you imagine?" She looked at her notebook, thought for a moment, and replied, "I draw what I feel. Sometimes what I see and what I feel are different." That touched Ethan in a way he hadn't expected. He realized that Lucia was the kind of child who absorbed the world in silence and then expressed it in shapes and colors. "How did you feel about me?" he asked, pointing to the drawing. She looked at the figure and said, "Quiet, almost sad, but beautiful in its own way." Ethan laughed, not quite sure how to process such honesty. Minutes later, Matteo returned, sweaty, with sandy knees and the widest smile in the world. "Did you see? I beat Isaac in the race." Ethan gave the boy a gentle tap on the shoulder. "I saw. You ran very well. You looked like an orange rocket." Matteo's eyes lit up. "That's my favorite color," he replied excitedly, and at that moment, Ethan realized how even the smallest details, like knowing his son's favorite color, had immense value when trying to recover lost time. Lucia, who had listened to the entire conversation, pulled out her notebook and began a new drawing, an orange rocket with a man smiling beside it. Before leaving, Lucia did something that Ethan would never forget. She tore a page from her notebook, folded it carefully, and handed it to him. "For you, but keep it safe, okay?" Ethan took the drawing as if it were a treasure. "I promise I'll keep it forever." And at that moment, her eyes lit up with a shy yet meaningful glow. Anna, watching everything from a distance, approached and said quietly, "Today was a big step. They're like that. When they trust, they really trust. But if you break that, Ethan, there's no turning back." He nodded, moved. "I won't break it. Ever again." That night, Ethan placed the rocket drawing in a picture frame and set it on his desk. Next to it, he opened the notebooks in which he had been recording every detail about his children. In Matteo's, he wrote, "Pure energy, wants to be noticed, needs to know he's being heard." In Lucia's, "Sensitive, profound, speaks little, but says so much in her lines." It was his way of not forgetting anything, of studying who his children were and how he could become part of their lives without intruding, without forcing. He was learning to be a father, like someone learning a new language, with listening, patience, and presence. On Sunday, he received an unexpected message from Sophia. "The twins came back from the park talking about you. Lucia drew, and Matteo wants you to attend practice next Saturday. It's still early, but it seems they liked you." Ethan responded immediately, "I'll only go if you think it's the right time. I promise to respect each one's pace." And after a few minutes, she simply replied, "Let's see." He knew there was still a long road ahead, but that "let's see" was a spark of hope, a space slowly being opened, and he was willing to wait as long as it took. During the week, Ethan began making real changes. He transferred part of the company's operations to a headquarters in Los Angeles. He set up a temporary office in a building near the children's school. He delegated responsibilities he once would never relinquish. For the first time, he didn't want to be everywhere at once. He wanted to be in one place, wherever his children were. When he told his team, many questioned him, some even protested, but he remained firm. "This is my new most important investment," he said. And he wasn't referring to money. It was about time, presence, relationship. On Friday night, he packed his bag carefully. He carried a water bottle, a couple of sliced oranges, a first aid kit, and, of course, the rocket drawing, folded in plastic, tucked into the inner pocket of his jacket. It was a reminder of why he was there. On Saturday morning, he arrived early at the park. Matteo was already warming up with his peers, and upon seeing Ethan from afar, waved excitedly. Lucia came soon after, carrying her inseparable drawing board. She sat beside him without saying a word and began drawing again. He didn't speak. He just stood there next to her, watching Matteo run and trying silently to understand how love can bloom even when it comes late. At the end of practice, Lucia showed her new drawing. It was the park scene from above, with Matteo running in circles and Ethan sitting beside her with a small heart drawn in the center of his t-shirt. "Did you put that there on purpose?" he asked, pointing to the detail. Lucia just shrugged but smiled. Matteo, sweaty and with a red face, came running with a participation medal that had been handed out to the children. "I got one. It's not gold, but it counts, right?" Ethan gave him a light tap on the shoulder. "It counts more than any gold." And at that moment, Matteo jumped into his arms without warning, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Lucia watched the scene with curiosity, as if still deciding how far she could go. Ethan said nothing. He only opened his arms toward her, as if to say, "Come if you want." And after a few seconds, she rested her head on his shoulder, without letting go of her drawing board. Anna, watching everything from a distance, came over with 2 small water bottles and handed one to Ethan. "They're accepting you in their own way. Don't mess it up." He simply nodded, holding the children as if he were carrying a gift he had waited years to unwrap. That weekend, for the first time, Sophia invited Ethan to participate in something more intimate, helping Diego with a school project. It was to be held in the school library, without promises or high expectations, but it was a step. All four will be there. Anna will be there too. If you want to help, just show up. Ethan arrived ahead of time. He brought books about agriculture, photos he had taken in Asia, and his laptop with images of terraced rice fields. He wanted to show Diego that he was there to contribute, not to command. When they arrived, Diego got straight to the point. Do you really have photos of Chinese farmers, not the ones you find on Google? Ethan opened the gallery on his laptop. These I took in a small village in Yunnan. They've been cultivating rice for generations, and they use techniques similar to those your school is studying. Diego approached, interested. Sophia watched everything, arms crossed, like a project manager ready to intervene. Javier, the more restless twin, ran among the shelves, while Lucia was already drawing at the table with her markers. When Ethan turned around, he saw that she was drawing the scene happening right there, all of them together in the library. And there he was in the drawing, in the middle of the four, as if that place already belonged to him too. After that day, in the library, something changed between Ethan and Sophia. It wasn't a declared forgiveness, nor a romantic restart, at least not yet, but a silent respect settled in, an acceptance of the fact that they were now intertwined by something greater than the past, the children. Ethan didn't pressure, he simply appeared, helped, and listened. He showed with actions that he wasn't planning to leave. He began attending school events, weekend games, simple lunches at Sophia's sister's house. Every step was calculated not out of fear, but out of care. He knew what he had lost, and now he knew what he could no longer afford to lose. One Sunday afternoon, while the six sat on the park's lawn with an old hose, Sophia sat beside him with 2 cups of coffee. "They're happy," she said, without looking him directly in the eyes. Ethan replied with a contained smile. "I think I'm beginning to understand what that means too." She looked at him, as if still searching for some hidden lie. "You're going to stay, right?" He didn't hesitate. "I'm staying, not the way you knew me before, but the way they need me, the way you deserved from the start." Sophia nodded, and there were no grand promises, only a truth spoken with conviction. Days later, Lucia handed him another drawing. It was a house, small, simple, with a tree beside it and 5 figures holding hands. In the front, written in crooked letters, were the words, "Nuestra Familia." Ethan held that paper as if it were a contract more valuable than any he had ever signed. He realized that for the first time in his life, he truly felt part of something real. It wasn't just about the children accepting him, it was about him allowing himself to belong, about letting go of control and learning from every gesture, every silence, every tight hug after an ordinary day. On the last Saturday of the month, there was a school presentation. Lucia recited a poem. Matteo participated in a symbolic race. Ben showed his project on ancient civilizations. And Sophia, the daughter, presented a model of the solar system made with styrofoam balls. When Ethan saw his name written in the corner of the model with the title, "Made with Dad," he had to hide his tears. He didn't cry in public, but inside, everything was falling apart, not from pain, but from gratitude. Sophia, next to him, squeezed his arm discreetly, and in that gesture, without words, he knew he was on the right path. A few weeks later, Ethan did something symbolic. He took an old picture, frame, the kind that had been forgotten at the back of a closet, and instead of putting a company photo or an award in it, He placed the first drawing Lucia had given him, the orange rocket with the smiling figure beside it. He hung it on the wall of his new office, the one he had set up just a few blocks away from Anna's house. Everyone who came in asked what it was, and he always answered the same. It's my greatest investment. It wasn't about business, and everyone knew it. It was about something that finally made him feel whole. Gradually, Sophia began to relax. Still sometimes cautious, she now allowed Ethan to pick up the children from school, to take them to the park, to help with their homework. There was no rush. They were rebuilding everything from scratch, and that took time. Ethan understood that her forgiveness wouldn't be a one-time event, but a process, and that the real apology came through actions, not just pretty words. More than regaining her trust, he wanted to earn the respect of the children every day, with consistency, with honesty. One ordinary Sunday, the 6 of them sat on the park's lawn. Sophia was reading a book, Ben was discussing a documentary, Matteo was practicing a somersault, Lucia was drawing, and little Sophia slept, leaning on Ethan's arm. He looked around and realized there was no audience, no applause, no prestige. But there was belonging, and that, to him, was something new. It was as if he were relearning how to live with them as his teachers. The realization hit him. He hadn't been saved by them, he had been transformed by them. And that was the true triumph. Not that of a successful businessman, but of a man who learned to be a father. And that day, as the sun set behind the trees and the children laughed at some silly remark by Matteo, Ethan closed his eyes for a moment and thought, if someone asked me what the best deal of my life was, I wouldn't hesitate to answer. It was coming back in time. It was choosing to stay. It was understanding that sometimes what matters most isn't in the places you chase, but in that which by luck is still waiting for you to return. Quote of the day. Sometimes life gives us a second chance disguised as responsibility. It's up to us to have the courage to embrace it with an open heart. If this story touched you in any way, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and activate notifications. Here we share real stories that move, inspire, and make you reflect. Thank you for being part of this journey with us, and tell us in the comments, from which city are you watching?